There we go. Yeah, this one should stay up now. Alright, so this is the agenda for today. So actually, I don't know how to teach you guys. Like the best I found for me, the best way that I learn is just to just start doing it right away and then figure it out as you go. And so yeah, over like the past year that I've been using it, most of the time I figured everything by myself, and then also reading a lot of documentation and also reading a lot on the community. And so yeah, that's kind of what I'm gonna try to do here. We are gonna be building an app. Let's see if I can show it to you real quick. Here's our goal. We're gonna try to go for this. It's not gonna look exactly the same, but we're gonna try to get to this as much as we can. So I think one of the hardest things of learning Flutter is actually like figuring out what to use to build, like, you know, the app that I showed you. Like, there's so much. If you look at there's so many widgets that you can use. This is the catalog. As you can see, it's just ridiculous the amount of stuff that's on here. So you don't need to like import any UI library. You can just use Flutter directly to build almost anything that you want. But the hardest thing is actually knowing what to use. So as you see, you know, this is the catalog. It's so much stuff, right? So we're gonna start with the most basic ones to actually do anything. And so these are some of the basic ones that you're probably gonna use a lot while making Flutter apps. Material app, theme, scaffold, safe area, padding, column, rows, all of that stuff. So to do that, we're just gonna go directly into the code. Can you guys create a new project? Or you can follow along, or you can just watch the video on YouTube later. But yeah, I'm gonna kind of. Alright, so hold on, I'm gonna bring the image of the app that we're gonna try to build again. We go this way. Alright, so again, this is the basic app that you get when you create a Flutter app. So I'm just gonna go ahead and clear everything. And create a new file. Call it app. So this is just going to be the app widget. Again, it's going to extend a stateless widget. I'll go into stateless and stateful in another session, but not this one. And remember last week I told you that every single widget starts off with a build method. And so this is going to be the root of the app, and every single app needs a root, needs to start somewhere. So what we're going to be using is material app, and this is the recommended, or actually I would say just do this for all the apps, the material app, and that this gives you the material app follows the material design for the most part, and it gives you a lot of elements that you can use in APIs. So it gives you basic functionality like navigation, theming, styles, things like that. So you don't have to do anything from scratch. Most of this has it on there. But even though it follows material design, it's actually very customizable. So you can just overwrite the theme and then like theme it however you want. Just the default one has some material design. So the very basic things that it needs, a material app, is just a title. So we're just gonna call it like coffee app, because it's just coffee. And then the second thing, one of the most, what it needs is just a home as well. So the home screen. I'm just gonna create a container for now, just a placeholder. And now from our main app, we just call our app. That's it. There's a lot more things that you can add on here, like the navigation. So you set your routes for your all the screens on your app, but that's something that we'll go into later, just not today. And here's where also you define the theme that you want to use. Like I said, the default one is just a material theme, but here you can just overwrite this and create your own theme. And we'll do that later on today. So I'm going to create another file. It's going to be our home screen. Just call it home. Stateless widgets. And build method. So the second widget, so we already started with material app, and the second widget we're going to look at is scaffold. Scaffold is another important one. It's basically the you should use scaffold in like every new screen. So for Android we have activities. Yeah, for Flutter typically we use scaffold. You don't need to, but actually, if you're doing something very customizable, you actually don't even need to use it, but it gives you a lot of really useful things. Like, so it gives you like access to a drawer. It gives you can use this. You can show snack bars on the scaffold. What else? Floating action buttons. You can just add it directly to the scaffold. App bar and bottom navigation. All of that you can just add it to the scaffold directly. So it's basically like a skeleton of a screen. So, every page in the app should probably use scaffold. Highly recommend it. Scaffold. So, to add a app bar, can anybody guess how you would do it?
App bar.
Yay. App bar. That's it. Actually, let me run it. So I'm running it on iPhone, but you can actually run it, Android, iPhone. But for macOS, I actually recommend iOS because Android, takes up a lot of CPU. But an iPhone simulator is very optimized for macOS. It's really smooth most of the time. But yeah, the cool thing about Flutter, this is an Android Studio. You could see like iPhone. And you can open the emulators from here directly. Oh, it's taking a bit because OBS, the streaming is also using a lot of CPU. And actually it doesn't look that clear. Does it look? It looks kind of blurry. Sam said to increase the font size.
Sam said, could you increase font size?
Yeah, I just did.
Oh.
So could you guess how would you add a body? Yay. So I'm just gonna, I usually just place containers like as placeholders and then I replace it later. And then how would you guess, how would you add a bottom bar? This is it's really easy, right? taking forever. Yeah, it doesn't look that clear on the streaming. I don't know why. Oh, there it is. Yeah, it does. I should have probably started this before live streaming. Did anybody get it running yet? Or, no.
Stay waiting.
Waiting for me or waiting for the build?
It's exactly the same thing as you.
Ah.
Running exactly.
Yeah, I had it running just before we started. But yes. Hey, what's up, man? Are you joining? We're waiting for Xcode build.
Mine is not already.
Yes. Oh yeah, wow. Xcode. Well, that took like 3 minutes. What is that? 3 minutes? Oh yeah, finally.
Mine took like 30 seconds.
Yeah, it's because mine is using a lot of CPU for the streaming. Syncing files. Alright, so anyways, so what are the things that we have in our app? We have an app bar. We have the rest of it is the body down here. So after this finishes syncing, it should show up. Something should show up. Might be missing something. Oh, I think we might need to define the theme. Actually, no, it should be default. But it should still show the app bar. So just set the color. Oh, yeah, there you go. So yeah, exactly. So the home should be the screen that we just created. Reloads. You see that hot reload? Just changes to light. Just save the file. If it's yeah, just save the file. Yeah, just save the file and it's hot reload. Yep. So we want this type of app bar, right? And the default app bar actually, it doesn't look. It's a set height. So we can actually just create our own app bar if we want. And so the way that I like to do it, I think it's a good approach, is for a specific widget that belongs in like in a specific, like the home screen, like the home app bar belongs here. So it would be easy to just create like an app bar here, right? It's just a function that returns some widget, but this is bad practice. Don't do this because it uses more CPU power to actually show to render the widget. So the reason why it uses the build function, every time anything changes or whatever, it's gonna call the build function, and whatever gets returned here, it's gonna show on the screen. And this build function can actually be called multiple times during an app. So, and the framework, the Flutter framework, is gonna check whatever got returned here. If it stays exactly the same, it's not gonna use any CPU power to actually, change the pixels. You're just gonna not do nothing. If it doesn't change, even though the build function gets called, if the UI didn't change at all, it's not gonna do anything. So it's good practice to just create every single thing as a stateless widget. So we're gonna create the home app bar. So yeah, because when I first started doing Flutter, and if you do this, it gets like nested really quick. Like you had a child, and you had another widget, and then you had another child in it, and it gets really nested really quick. So I think a lot of people, what they do is like, oh, I'll just create another function here that does the rendering of the widget, but it's not good. It's better to just separate everything as a stateless widget. And if it's something that can be reused, you probably put it in a separate file so that you can use it anywhere else. But if it's something that belongs specifically to this screen, then it's, you can just add it down here. So the app bar actually is not just any widget, it's actually a preferred size widget. So all we need to do is just implement preferred size widget. There we go. And it's gonna ask to override a preferred size. So this is here's where we can just define the size that we want. So I actually don't know how big is this. I'm just gonna throw a random number, see what it looks like. And for this, we're going to use another, I don't think I added it here, but it's another useful widget, and it's a material. That's it. All this is just a sort of a widget that follows the material design, so it follows the theme that you defined in your app, and it follows like elevation defined by the material design. So you don't have to implement all of that by yourself. It's all like in here by default. And I'm just gonna set a random color for now. Colors. And so the thing about widgets is that everything has a child, How do I explain this? So yeah, every widget is supposed to have a child, like something that goes in it. So you'll see this a lot, child. Just gonna put a container there for now. And so I guess it's a good time to cover the themes, because as you see here, we defined this red color here, and you could do that everywhere that you want, but that's not probably not a good practice, because if something changes, you have to go back here and change it everywhere you defined it. So that's where this theme is useful, because you can just define it here and then you can just access it everywhere. So you would just change it in the theme of the app. And the best way to do it, I think, is just because this gives you the default. So maybe you want to change maybe just one color. If you would just implement this by yourself, you would have to define every single color everywhere. So it's really easy to just do the theme and then copy with. So this is going to do is just going to copy the default, and then it's only going to, whatever you change in there, it's going to use those. So we want to change the app bar theme. I actually got the color already, this color already. It is this one. I'm just going to give it an elevation of 2. Yeah, so now you guys are done with it. This is just opacity, the last one. So if you see this changed immediately, what I used over here, the app bar, is just gonna follow whatever you define in here, in the app bar theme. And actually here you can also add like your text styles as well. That's why it's really text theme. That's why this is really useful to use this theme. Anyways, so here all we have to do is just get the theme from here. And this is another thing that you're probably gonna have to learn along the way, is when you do something like off context. Alright, so the way that Flutter works is that it's just like a huge tree, right? Yeah, there you go. It's a huge tree. It's just like a tree of widgets. So whatever it's defined up here, like in the app theme, we defined it like way up here in the root. And if a certain widget has, or a certain class has this, it can typically go up from wherever it is. Like here, the app bar would be like somewhere down here, the tree. But with the of context, it can go up and then fetch whatever you defined up here. Oh yeah, this is another useful tool provided by IntelliJ. So let's, what else do we need here? So let's go ahead and change our app bar to our new home app bar. I believe it's 100. We can just change this to maybe 150. It looks good, right? And so the other thing is that it's rounded, right? Can you guess how we would define that?
Border radius.
Yeah. Actually, material. I think material has border radius. There you go. And then it's just another class. Border radius. If you select all, it's gonna round every corner, but all we want is just the bottom ones. So we'll go with only. Can you guess which corner are we gonna? Bottom. Bottom right. And the radius. We want a circular radius, right? And then the bottom left as well. Okay, we got our radius. That's it, super simple, right? Alright, so let's just put a text in here. So it's got it looks like the entire thing has a text on one side and then like an image on the other side. What is that, like, when there's like a widget from left to right, what would you call that? Yeah, there you go. So the child is going to be a row. And things like a row, so column and row are the same, just row goes from left to right and then column from top to bottom, vertically and horizontally. And they have they have an array. They don't just have one child, they have an array of widgets, so it would be children. So the first one is just the actually that could work, but actually let's do that. We can just remove it. Oh, what I wanted to show is this. So if we add a text, and we'll just put coffee, right? So you see how it comes, it's shown like way up here in the corner. That's because, so like I mentioned in the previous, last week, is that Flutter just takes completely control of the entire screen. However, the system OS has, the status bar, which is kind of overlaid over your app. So in iPhones, you typically have the status bar on top, and then this little status bar down here, and they're overlaid over the app. But Flutter has control of the entire screen. So can you guess how would we solve that issue? Actually, it's easier than that. Safe area. That's it. All that safe area does is it checks the insets of the OS and then it just pushes your widgets down or up based on this. And since this is an app bar, so the safe area does it for everything, like the status bar on top, and then this little, what is this called? I don't know, for iOS. Yeah. So the safe area does it for everything, but in this case, since we have an up bar, we can just bottom false. I don't think you need to do that, but I like to do it. All right, so so the row, so everything that is, you guys from the web, you should do that. You should know this, that there's rows and columns, and then everything inside of it is just kind of fit in there however it wants to. But what we want is we want to expand it to fill the size that we declared down here. And how would you expand it? Yep, that's it. So now this is at least taking everything, the entire size horizontally. And I'm just going to add another one here. This would be like the second widget over here. So now this, because if we just add them like this, they're all going to be scrunched up to the side. And we kind of want this in the center. So how would you put it in the center? There we go. Super easy, right? Alright, so that's our home app bar. So we'll just leave it like that for now, and we'll start working with the body, which is the rest of it here. So the body also belongs to the home screen, right? So we'll just kind of write it down here. And again, the body is going to be taking up this entire section. So we just want to go ahead and start with another safe area so that we can avoid the bottom area. And since we don't care about the top, just set this to false. Alright, so we see that if we put anything in there, it's just gonna be like directly touching the corner. So what is this called? When it's like spaced in there. Hey, there you go. Childlessly padding. And padding typically takes the padding size, and this is called edge insets geometry. Wait, is it that? No, it's not. It's just edge insets, my bad. So you're gonna use this a lot for like padding and margins. And you can use it like from all sides or symmetric, or you can define like each whatever you want, but for this we need symmetric, and symmetric takes either horizontal and both horizontal and vertically, so it's going to add padding either horizontally or vertically. Just going to put 5 there. Alright, so what should our child be? We have something up here, and then the rest, a list view down here. So what do you guys think it should be?
Too low.
Huh?
Half too low.
Alright, so this is a list view down at the bottom. And then there's like another thing up here. So it just has two widgets. So we should use a column, right? And an array of widgets. So the first one is just like, it's just some container that has maybe a row of widgets. What are these called? Chips, right? So it's a container. It has a height, I don't know, just give it 70. And the child is a row. And what are they called? Like chips. Action chip is, there's actually a couple of chips, but I think action chip is clickable. Arabica robusta. What happened? It's not showing up.
Let the bodies do it.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. Right, so we need to switch the body for our new body. There we go. Yay. Alright, so we set this little section to be a container of like a height of 70. What should we set this second one to be? Let's like expand the rest of the size, right? Another expanded. So in this expanded, we can just put a list view directly in there. List view. And this view has separate, like different functions that you can use to create your list. And there's actually different ways that you could, there's actually so many different ways that you could do this. Like you could just do list. I think it's generate, yeah, but I think the proper way is to do a list view. And the builder is what actually builds like each widget. So like if you have cards, you know, for that particular widget that you want to build, you would just add it in here, and then it also takes like the list. But yeah, let's go ahead and do that. So the item builder is just a function that gives you the context. And like I mentioned before, the context, it's basically so the widget knows where it's at in the tree. So, you know, it can just go up and access the theme or whatever you define up there. And then it's just going to give you the index. I think another thing that it takes is item count. So here you would, you know, put the list length. We're just gonna say 10. Imagine we have 10 items. And so here in the item builder, we can actually just create another widget and whatever we want in there. So I'm just going to go ahead and create a new card, coffee card, a new separate widget. And this one's a bit more complicated. So what's the first thing that we can see? 1, 2, 3.
No, and 2 columns.
Yeah, 1 row and 2 columns. So that's it. It's pretty simple. So actually, there's some padding on there too. I'm just gonna do a padding. Horizontal, I don't know, maybe 10. It's vertical, maybe 15. And the child is going to be the row. So the first item on the row is a image. I'm just going to create a container with a fixed size. I don't think we have time to go into image. The padding in here? Yeah, you can actually. Container also has a padding attribute.
Just you wrap everything.
Yeah, you could actually do it the other way too, like just make a container and then give it padding. I don't think there's a what is like a set way that you should do it. You could do it either way. But just so that we can see it, we'll go back to our item builder and return our new coffee card. Yeah, here we have something. Yeah, so actually, I think I'll stop here. I'm getting a bit tired, and I don't know if you guys are still. You guys want to continue? Stuck anywhere? Where you? Yeah, maybe it's a good time to start reviewing. If you guys have any questions or. Huh? Oh, good. I tried to be kind of clear.
I have a question.
Yeah.
You put this one on 10.
Yeah.
What if random?
Yeah, I mean, you could. I mean, if you have a list, you would just list that length. This is, this is whatever you get from the list.
Omit this. I need to modify it.
Yeah, this is needed to know how many times we should build this widget. You could also just use like a list. Like if you just have a list, you can just.
List something.
Yeah. Well, actually, I'm saying is that this is not the only way to do it. List view. There's a couple more ways to do it for different scenarios. Yep. Sam has a question.
Hey, if I put a container and here container and then in expand
Yeah.
container and then add expand it and instead.
No, container doesn't have an expanded attribute. There is also like flexible, I think. Yeah, flex. Or no, I think it's flexible.
Direction.
I think it's flexible. So this is more like the web. You can give it flex. Yeah, I'm not sure if expanded has it. Oh, it does. Yeah, so it's like the web. Yeah, exactly.
Do you think like building UIs in Flutter is more comfortable on web than actually building UIs in native?
Well, I mean, it gets inspired from the web. Yep. You have any questions, Tom?
I think Sama's question.
Oh yeah, what was it? How do you start UI development? I mean, breaking down into child components. Put everything in a single file. I think I just explained that earlier. That if it's like a widget that belongs only in the home screen, like this section, it's probably only going to be used in the home screen. So that's why I just put it in the same file as well. But if it's something like this, that's we could probably use it in other places, then of course just separate it into a separate file. All right.
And you put like a logic in
No.
have a function.
No. That's so something that's we're still gonna cover later on, like how to actually use like a proper state management and logic, but that's a bit more complicated, advanced, I would say.
But so it's not put in the class.
Not necessarily. You can. Well, especially don't put it in the build function. Don't try to put any logic in here, because like I said, this can get called multiple times.
It's like render.
Yeah, it's like render. Yeah. So actually, if you switch this to stateful widget, you get a init state function, which you can initialize like any logic in here, like make an API call, and it also has a dispose. Yep. Yeah, it's very similar, right? Yeah, so
This component will allow.
I don't think it has that.
No, I mean this one.
Yeah, dispose is pretty much when the component gets thrown away, it's gonna call this, so you can clean up. Okay.
If I display this app on the iPad and I need to show this row, but I mean one row, two items, can we show that?
Oh, you mean like different UIs for like different screen sizes? Yeah, so so you would actually maybe, there's no set way to do it, but you can just check the size here. Using this, and again, it's just gonna go back to like the root widget and get the size, and then you can just calculate and maybe render something different based on that size, because this is gonna be called multiple times, and this is also gonna be called when you rotate the device. So if the size changes, it's gonna show a different widget if you set that logic there. right. Good.
I will do homework now.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's a lot. At first, it's a lot to take in. But yeah, all right. I think this is it for this week. Continue next week. I'm gonna push this up to GitHub and post a link on the Flutter channel.